Bloodlines, and today we are talking about Death's Design, the Wheel of Fortune of fantasy of fearing everyday existence. That's right, we're talking about the Final Destination franchise. Final Destination, Final Destination 2, Final Destination 3, The Final Destination, Final Destination 5, and yes, girly pops, Final Destination Bloodlines. Over the last 25 years, these movies have shown you the most brutal ways you can die from everyday things. Escalators, airplanes, roller coasters, you name it, dead. It's kind of like that TV show that used to air on Paramount, 1,000 Ways to Die, and it's like anything you do can kill you. Drinking your cat's milk, you better hope that you didn't eat white snake root, girl, or you'll die. Today, we are just talking about the merits of these movies and how they've held up in cinema history. And why be like, Alyssa, I'm so sorry, but the Final Destination movies, these crazy supernatural slasher movies, they don't have any impact on film history. And I beg to differ. Have you seen Malignant? Did you see what that did to us as a culture? That was because of Final Destination. Yeah, the connections I'm going to be making throughout this entire thing. And unlike the torture porn we end up getting later in 2000s, Final Destination, at least in its beginnings, never felt mean. It was always a bit campy in the best of ways. It was a melodrama. And you know, if you watch Sinners, you know that I love a melodramatic horror movie. Oh, life or death on the line, in this case, for real. But I love it. Everything raises the stakes of the movie, and you're just like, I can't wait to see what happens. Are the Final Destination movies good? Yes. I'm gonna say yes. But are they all created equally? No. But I am excited to talk about these movies, and we are starting with Final Destination, and we are ending at Final Destination Bloodlines. Yeah, we're covering 25 years of film. Get a snack, get a drink, get a bevy, as I did here. It is Powerade. It's in a Wichita Film Festival cup, but I need my electrolytes to get through this. Created by Jeffrey Riddick as a spec script for The X-Files and originally titled Flight 180, the story was pretty basic and it followed people cheating death, specifically Scully's brother. The story caught the attention of then executive producers for the show, Glenn Morgan and James Wong, and they would eventually work on the script to make it into the feature film. That would become the directorial debut of a little-known horror maestro, James Wong. Yeah, so if you're like, Malignant feels familiar, it's James Wong, girly pops, the master of camp and horror. Expanding on the original concept, Final Destination became a supernatural survival horror movie. And with a $23 million budget, Wong would go on to establish the visual language and the tone of the Final Destination movies, which we all seem to love because, again, on a $23 million budget, this movie made $112.9 million. Yeah, that's good. And you know what they say, every time a movie turns a profit, a franchise gets its wings. And the formula across the franchise is pretty much the same, with some little tweaks here and there that we'll touch on, but let's get into the formula and break it down so we know what we're working with. Our main characters die in a gruesome, drawn-out set piece that really defines each movie. But then, wait a minute, it's a premonition. That's right. None of it real. Our main character snaps out of it, has a micro panic attack, and is like, I gotta get out of Dodge. Them and a few other survivors escape death, but death does not like to be cheated. After the memorial that mourns everyone we lost, their characters start to die one by one, in the order that they would have died in the original disaster. As our main characters learn that they are about to die, they try to figure out death's pattern and how to break the chain. As I said earlier, this is the formula that each movie follows, but there are some elements that make each movie a little bit different, a little bit quirky, but we really get to know the lay of the land with Final Destination. Speaking of which, let's get into it. And before we get really deep into it, I just want to let you know that we are talking about all of the movies across the franchise, and I will be spoiling the main plot points for the first 5 Final Destination movies. If you just want to see my recap and review of Final Destination Bloodlines, it will be pretty spoiler free and you could just jump there in the chapters below. I will rank it among the other entries in this movie, which is something we also are doing. So not only are we recapping and reviewing what makes these movies awesome, we will be ranking them from best to worst. And with all of that out of the way, let's get into Final Destination. We open the film to meet Alex, who is packing for his class trip to Paris. He's a bit of a superstitious guy, but he is very excited to go on this 10-day trip with just his friends in Paris, unsupervised. Hello. As everyone is boarding the flight, Alex is feeling a little bit anxious. A little bit like, what if this plane crashes? And I think he has the entire right to be anxious. The lights are flickering. His little tray table is broken. The vibes are off. The vibes are off. Call the vibe police because the vibes are off. When the plane takes off, they immediately hit turbulence and things are scary. But then everything smooths out and you're just like, oh, just a little case of the jitterbugs. But then the jitterbugs start making the plane shake violently and all of the baggage falls from the overhead containers. Everyone's screaming, everyone's panicking, and then half of the plane gets ripped off, taking a good amount of people with it. That would never happen in 2025, right? And then the plane explodes. All of those people on that flight, gone. But wait, remember the formula? Yeah, it was a premonition. Folks are so boring when Alex wakes up and he's like, I just saw us all die. I gotta get off this plane. Nine Inch Nails fan Carter is like, please don't already ruin my trip. I'm gonna fight you, Alex, and does just that. The fight causes Alex and Carter to get escorted off the plane, and they end up taking Billy, who was boarding the plane, off with them. Carter's girlfriend Terry follows, and so did two teachers, which includes Mrs. Luton. In the Earth Girl of our dreams, Claire Rivers sees all this happening, and she's like, what if... And hear me out, what if I also got off the plane? One of the characters named George asks his little brother Todd to go check on Carter just to make sure everything's squared away. But unfortunately for all the people who did leave the plane, they can't get back on. No. The flight's taking off without them. Luckily, one of the teachers is able to get back onto the plane, so that way all of these teenagers are not just running loose in Paris without supervision. In the airport, Carter and Alex are still having a bit of a tiff when the security guard's like, what's going on? And Alex is like, I don't know how to tell you this, but I saw the plane crash. I thought we were gonna die. And everyone's like, you're crazy. That's insane. That would never happen. Okay, we'll tell that to the airplane that just exploded in the sky. 287 people die on this plane. Yeah. So the only survivors are Alex, Todd, Clea Rivers, Miss Luton, Carter, and his girlfriend Terry. So how are they going to celebrate cheating death? With the memorial. People died. Again. If you have a question, go back to the formula. The formula is there for a reason. At the funeral, everyone is trying to grieve, but Carter is like, I'm never gonna die. Death should fear me, a 17-year-old Nine Inch Nails fan. And because Alex did predict Death's demise, some agents are following her around going like, how did you know that plane was going to explode? Are you a terrorist? And I need to let you know that this movie came out before 2001, so like, we didn't have the same energy around planes and like them exploding as we do today. If you want to see how we all reacted to planes in cinema, look at the numbers for Donnie Darko. That movie absolutely bombed at the box office because it came out after 9/11. After a few days, Alex has become obsessed with the plane crash. He's like, how did I know this was going to happen? What does that premonition tell me? While he's sitting, he's kind of just like annoyed that an owl has landed in his room. Though he throws a magazine at it, it shreds up and a little piece of paper falls on his lap, and he looks at it and he goes, Todd. Knowing that Todd is in danger, he runs to his friend's house. But it's too late. After shaving his smooth face and trimming his nose with some really sharp scissors, Todd ends up slipping on some water that Death had made leak from the toilets, falls into a clothesline that chokes him out. He dies from suffocation, and it's gnarly. Alex runs to the house, but everyone's looking at him like he killed Todd, and Clear, who is just hiding in the trees, is like, you should probably get out of here. Find me tomorrow, we'll talk. And what are they going to talk about? Well, they're going to talk about how exactly Alex knew that they were all going to die in that flight. He's like, it was a premonition, I just saw the signs. And Clear's like, okay, sometimes I see signs as well. Do you think looking at Todd's dead body will help you see more signs and help us like, I don't know, avoid dying? Alex is like, it's worth the shot, pretty lady. After sneaking into the morgue, we end up meeting the horror icon, the late and the great Tony Todd. He's a mortician who's just like, hey, you guys f***ed up. Being the harbinger of doom that he is, he's like, let me give you some lore about what you guys did that pissed off Death. He's like, in Death, there are no accidents. There is no coincidences. Once your fate is mapped out in Death's design, you cannot unstitch yourself and be like, ooh, JK. As Tony Todd says.
And you don't even want to fuck with that, Mac Daddy.
So what exactly is Death's design? Well, I'm so glad you asked. See, the order in which you were supposed to die on the plane is the way you were gonna die in real life. Well, then who's next? Alex starts to figure it out at a cafe with Clear, and he's like, I know how the order goes. Todd, Terry, Miss Luton, Carter, Billy, you, Miss Claire, and then me. Speaking of the whole Rat Pack, guess who has just showed up? And guess who's pissed off? Yeah, it's Carter. How surprising. Said no one ever. You're probably like, hey, why do you keep calling him a Nine Inch Nails fan? I'll tell you here right now. When Carter pulls up to the cafe, he's playing Into the Void by Nine Inch Nails, which was released in 1999, but only in Australia, which means he had to either go to an actual store and get a special order for it and pay for shipping, which is international shipping, crazy, or he had to go online and purchase it, which again, still international shipping. How much had that cost in the past? I don't know. I wasn't cognizant. I wasn't aware of price and money. But all you need to know is that he special ordered the CD, and so therefore therefore I assume he's a fan. He's in the know. Also, because of the song, I'm pretty sure it's how we get the title Final Destination, because in the song he's like, it's the final destination. Alex is trying to explain his theory to the gang, but they are over it. They're like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. I'm traumatized as it is. Let me just continue to live my life. But Carter really wants to find Alex, and his girlfriend Terry is like, I'm over this. Literally, see you next Tuesday. I gotta go. Good for her. She's gonna go live her life, as she should. At least we know that Alex's theory had legs. And Miss Luton, poor Miss Luton, she's so traumatized by this. She's like, I just wanted to be a teacher. That's all I wanted to do. Now I have to leave town and start over, change my name, get a new ID, get a new car, be somebody completely different. Maybe she'll get bangs. I don't know. As she's packing up to leave, she puts on some John Denver, which honestly, how ironic. If you don't know, John Denver died in a plane crash. But this brings up another key element that we should always be aware of in a Final Destination movie, the Song of Death. There'll always be a song that's playing that kind of hints at the death of a character. So while Carter was playing that Nine Inch Nails song, it wasn't for him, it was for Terry. She was gonna die. So now that we hear the Song of Death, and because we're looking at the list, she is the next to die, we know something brutal is about to happen to Miss Luton. After dumping out her tea and pouring in some ice cold vodka, her cup cracks and leaks liquid, which then accidentally leaks into her computer. The computer short circuits and explodes, launching a piece of the thing into her neck. She's bleeding out. She's having a bad time. She's slipping and sliding on her own blood. She falls to the ground in her kitchen and she's trying to grab a towel to like put pressure on the wound when a bunch of knives fall into her body. And to make matters worse, she's not dead, but there is a fire that has broken out in her house. Things are looking tough, but luckily Alex gets in just in time. Unfortunately, he doesn't act quick enough to stop death from exploding the oven and causing a chair to fall and plunge the knife deeper into Miss Luton's chest. Tough city. It's tough city out there, girls. R.I.P. to my traumatized queen. But if we didn't get this moment, we wouldn't have the funniest moment in the entire franchise.
Hey, Alex.
And I think this is kind of what makes this movie amazing. It's balancing chaos and camp so well. Again, the characters are super sold on like whatever tragedy they're facing, and their stakes feel real. They don't want to die. They want to continue to live, and as they should. There are moments where we are building character and building connections and actually caring for these characters enough to want to root for them to escape the chain of death. Except for Carter. Carter can choke. And it builds tension that makes these deaths kind of scary. But then you get to the kills and they're so dramatic and so campy to the point where you can't help but laugh at the absurdity. And that is what makes a good Final Destination movie. And you're gonna notice that when movies lose sight of this balance, they're not very good. They're pretty bad. The remaining survivors decide to like wait out the rest of the night in Carter's car. But then Carter finds out that he's next on the chopping block and is like, what if? And hear me out. What if I put all of our lives at risk? Thoughts, questions, concerns? I think his theory is that like if somebody was with him who's not supposed to die, then he won't die. He ends up parking the car on a train tracks and is like, let's see if this train hits us. And the rest of the gang is like, I don't think I want to engage in this anymore. And they all leave the car. Carter's like, okay, whatever, I'll leave too. But his seatbelt is stuck. And there's a train coming 1,000 miles per hour at him. He is going to die. Lucky for him, Alex is a really good guy and saves Carter from being absolutely crushed by a train. And this brings up element number 2 that we got to keep in mind for these movies, the theory of divine intervention. If someone intervenes in your death and you are saved, death skips on to the next person. So that means the next person on the chopping block is Billy, and oh boy, chopped is he. A piece of metal from the car gets flung at Billy and his head gets chopped off. And I don't mean like decapitation, I mean half of his head gets lobbed off, and it is cinema. Next person on the chopping block, Clear Rivers. A real character's name. Death is trying to electrocute Miss Claire, and she's like, oh gosh, what if I just stayed in this car and didn't move for the rest of my life? Alex is like, well, because it's not my turn, technically I can't die yet. So he grabs the live wires, electrocutes himself, and saves Claire. We did it, Joe. Claire cries over his dead body and is like, R.I.P., I really want to kiss you. And he comes back awake and he's like, what if we kissed right here, right now? The gang beat death. So how should we celebrate? With the makeup trip to Paris. Woo! Unfortunately, that's when Alex starts to see some signs. He's like, wait a minute. Death never came from my ass. I think I'm next. He's like, I gotta go. As he's walking back to the hotel, Clear, who is now blonde to show that time has passed, is like, Alex, the bus. And he's like, ugh, and barely missed getting by a bus. Carter goes over and he's like, whoa, bro, that's crazy. So what does that mean? I don't know, Carter. Let's ask that falling sign that's about to swat you away like a fly. And this is how we get our third rule of death. Just because you skip death this time doesn't mean it's not coming back for you sooner or later. You can't escape death. It could skip you and go to the next person, but it's gonna come right back to you. As Fleetwood Mac once said, you can never break the chain. That is Final Destination. Overall, this film really does hold up still. It's actually quite fun to watch. I was taking notes, but the whole time I was like, okay, James Wong was cooking with gas, with fire, with everything at his disposal, and he made me a Michelin star meal. Yum, yum, yum. I'm in love with this movie. Once again, I had emotions towards all the characters, and I think that's all you can really ask for when you're coming to a horror movie from the 2000s, because some of these characters can be stocky, but these characters, this is horror at its finest. This is 2000 horrors at its finest. I'm gonna rank Final Destination in the S tier. It really deserves that. She really is that girl. Okay, next movie. Nearly a year after the tragedy of Flight 180, Kimberly and her friends decided that they need to celebrate spring break. That's right, they're headed to Daytona. Unfortunately, when Kimberly turns on the radio, she hears Highway to Hell playing and she's like, oh, that's not a good sign. A few moments later, a bunch of bouncing logs fall off a truck and cause one of the gnarliest pileups you have ever seen in film history, which has made us all deathly afraid of logs on the road. Do logs bounce? No. But are you still fearful? Yes. And should you be? Oh my god, yes. Let's go through the death order because it will be important later. Are you ready? Are you ready to hear it right here, right now? Cool. Killing in order: a cop, a high school teacher named Eugene, a stoner named Rory, a businesswoman named Kat, a mother and her son, a douchebag with a Pontiac Firebird, and Kim and her friends. But again, folks, remember the formula. Yes, it was a premonition. When Kimberly comes back, she's like, the signs are all here. I'm not getting off this exit ramp. I'm not getting on the freeway. And the cop is like, okay, bet. I'm gonna arrest you. Because Kim is blocking the entire off-ramp, nobody behind her can get onto the road. And that's a good thing because we're watching an entire pileup disaster happening on the highway. She is mid-panic attack. She's not seeing what's going on. And the cop looks over and he's like, watch out. Pulls her out of the way as a semi runs into her car, killing all of her friends. Wait a minute. But the formula, that's not how it works. Kim's friends were the last ones to die in the premonition, including Kim, but she was going to be the first one to die in this situation. What's going on here? I think we need another death to confirm our suspicions. Remember that Pontiac Firebird guy that I said I wasn't going to give a name to? This is why. When he gets home from, I assume, winning the lottery and buying a MacBook, he's like, I'm gonna make some mozzarella sticks, which I don't have a problem with. I'm a big mozzie fan. But he takes his pan of spaghetti and throws it out the window, and it doesn't wash the pan. No. As he's cooking, he spills a bunch of oil, and then he's standing over the sink looking at his ring, which then falls into the sink. He puts his hand in there. It gets stuck. Why does it get stuck? Oh, because there's a fire breaking out in his house. Do I feel bad for this man? No. Luckily, he gets his arm out just in time and is able to escape his apartment just as it explodes. He's like, ooh, that was close, then slips on his spaghetti, falls down, and an escape ladder goes straight into his eyeball. I love it so much. So what is going on with the pattern in this movie? I think we should bring in the last survivor from Flight 180 for a little bit of an expo dump. That's right. Hello. Clear. We get to read in a newspaper clipping that Alex died 5 months after the events of Final Destination 1 when a loose brick hit him in the face. Originally, Alex was supposed to return for Final Destination 2 and his death was going to be by drill, but the actor who plays Alex was unable to return because he was taking a mental health break from acting at the time, and his schedule just didn't line up for him to be in Final Destination 2. However, he is a main character in the Chucky series for sci-fi, and his son in that series is going to be one of the leads in the new Final Destination Bloodlines movies. But because Alex is not in this movie, we do get Clear, who is living in a padded room and has taken up to taping everything to a wall and just going, how is death still working out? I also have some bad news for you guys. Kim, our 19-year-old main character, is kind of schmoozing it up with a cop, the cop who saved her, the 30-year-old man. Boo, tomato, tomato. But together, the cop, Kimberly, and Clear are able to figure out that the pattern is moving backwards. So the first person who died in the premonition will now be the last person to die. But luckily for Kim, because of divine intervention, it skipped her and she is now last on the chopping block. So who's next on death's list? A child. Kim has a vision of birds and she's like, oh my gosh, I remember who's next. Let's go save this child. And as she sees him, she's like, watch out for the birds. He's like, The bird's there, let me chase them. Chases the birds and then looks up and gets squashed by a plate of glass. Yeah, he's too old to be chasing birds. Actually, that's so mean for me to say. He can chase the birds if he wants, but he will get crushed to death by glass. After watching her son get crushed by glass, the mom is like, you know what? What if I also died? What if? Kim is feeling a bit hopeless, but luckily for her, Clear is like, I am joining your crusade because you're really bad at saving lives. And because of Clear, we get to visit our favorite harbinger of doom. Yeah, we get to see Tony Todd again. I've seen some theories online that Tony Todd is Death himself, but I would argue that Tony Todd is not Death, but he's like the Death's right-hand man. So he's like a man who walks between worlds, and he's really just on like cleanup duty. He's there making sure that the people who are supposed to die do end up dying. But he's not like making death happen, you know? But he does explain some new lore. He's like, if you want to break the cycle, you have to reintroduce new life. New life that wasn't supposed to be there. New life throws the whole thing off, and Death is just like, you know what? This was too much to plan. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm overwhelmed. I'm overworked. I'm stressed out. I'm done. Kim is like, oh my God, there was a pregnant lady that I saw the premonition. Maybe she has that baby and we all live. Crazy conclusion to come to, but a conclusion nonetheless. This theory is further emphasized when Kim gets a vision of a woman driving a white van into the water. This white van is similar to the one that the pregnant lady was driving the day they were all supposed to get onto the highway, and Kim is like, oh my God, that's the answer. I am so right. I love this. But they had to find the pregnant lady first, which is really, really hard. But luckily, Kim is dating a cop now who is so okay abusing his powers. He runs the plate and then puts out a notice to all the cops. They're like, if you see this car, arrest the lady. Just arrest her. No questions asked. You know how people have rights? What if? Hear me out. We ignored them. Until they can find the pregnant lady, the remaining survivors all get together in an apartment and like try to death-proof the house as good as possible. Unfortunately for them, the mom and Eugene, the school teacher, are just like, we don't want to be here. Unfortunately, after they leave, the stoner finds a sign of a man with hooks, and the cop calls the mom and he's like, hey, a man with hooks is gonna kill you, which is not what you want to hear when there's a man with a box of prosthetic arms that all have hooks on them and he's sniffing your hair. The mom rightly believes that this man is going to murder her right then and there and tries to run away. Unfortunately, her braid is caught in one of the hooks. She gets caught as she's exiting the elevator. Elevator doors close on her head and she starts to get lifted up and everyone's screaming, everyone's trying to save her, and then she gets decapitated. Yep, head gone. New fear of elevators was unlocked by this exact moment. Terrified by the actual existence of fate and the fact that he is marked for death, Eugene is like, I think I'm gonna unalive myself. He takes the cop's loaded gun and tries to like end his life multiple times, but they're all duds. None of the bullets go through. The cop is like, that would never happen. And I'm like, brother, why are you carrying a loaded revolver around? That's insanity. But this is how we get our fourth rule. Pay attention. If you are marked by death, you do not get to justify when or where or how you get taken out. Sorry, girly pop, life's out of your hands. So who's next on the list? It's Kat. It's Kat. Yeah, hate to tell ya. But good news comes out of this. We found the pregnant lady and she is arrested. Unfortunately for the gang, the lady does go into labor by the stress that she's under. As she's going to the hospital, the rest of the gang is going to where the lady was being held. Unfortunately, Kat's tire explodes and they end up running into a bunch of PVC pipes. Kat does have a PVC pipe that is going through her headrest. She barely survives. She really almost dies because it is her time to die. So the fact that this wasn't her cause of death is pretty weird. What's going on? Unfortunately, Mr. Eugene is injured. They call the ambulance, it pulls up, it takes Eugene to the hospital, but as it's leaving, it almost hits a farmer's son. Luckily, the stoner pulls the son out of the way, but something's feeling weird. The vibes are off. The stoner goes over to Kim and is like, hey, can you take my wallet and can you make sure to delete all of my documentaries that I have at home? I don't want to break my mom's heart. And that is how the stoner character became my favorite character in this entire movie. But it's not his time yet, guys. Don't worry. Let's go check in with the business lady Kat and see how she's doing as she is pinned into the van thanks to a log that's like over her lap. She's smoking. She's stressed. The fire department shows up and they're like, we're gonna help you out, girly pop, don't you worry. They hit the car with the little hammer that pries off the door, which sets off the airbags and pushes Kat's head into the PVC pipe. tough city out there for the cat fans. What makes it worse is that she drops her cigarette and it gets pushed into a little drainage pipe where gas from a local news van that backed up onto a rock has been dripping into, which sets off an explosion that launches barbed wire towards the gang. Kim and the cop duck down to avoid getting sliced in half, but unfortunately, the stoner that I love so much does get sliced up like a very poorly put together piece of pizza. But no time to mourn the best character in the movie. We gotta go see a pregnant lady. At the hospital, things are getting a bit scary, a little bit hairy, some would say. Things are not looking good for Eugene. He is next, and Death is like, what if? What if I start leaking gas in your room and almost unplug this like sparkly little plug? What if I exploded your hospital room? Fortunately, the pregnant lady gives birth and Kim is like, we did it, Joe. We stopped death. But then she's like, wait, let me really think about it. And she goes, oh my God, in my premonition, the pregnant lady never died. Kim, these visions you've been having this entire movie, what was the point of them? So because the chain is not broken, Eugene is on the list. You hate to see it. For some reason, Claire is like, oh my God, there's Eugene. She opens the door, which unplugs the thing, and it kills Eugene. Guess what? Because Claire is still on the chopping block, she's next, and she gets swallowed up by the blaze. R.I.P. to Claire. She really deserved a better death because of how iconic her status was at this point. It's like, how can you kill the last surviving character from the first movie? That's rude. Kim, for some reason, is like, all the signs are pointing to my death. I have to die, but bring me back to life because all my plans have worked out so well up to this point. She drives the van into the lake, dies, but the cop saves her and then she's brought back to life. Woo, new life. I guess that's how you break the chain. Guys, I don't care. I don't care about Kim. But luckily for her, I guess she gets to live another day. We flash forward a couple months and we're ending the movie with a cookout at the farm where Kim and the cop watched all of their friends die. Nothing like having a cookout at a death scene. That's what I always say. I'm also mad that the cop and Kim are still dating because ew. But the farmer is sharing a story. He's like, yeah, it's really crazy. One of your friends who died on my property saved my son's life. He was supposed to die that day too. And Kim is like, not this. But today, the death has come for the child. The grill explodes, blowing up the child and ending the cookout, serving up some fried arm. The Final Destination 2. While this movie does have some of that heart and that humor that makes the first movie so strong, this movie is not it for me. It's trying really hard while also trying to reinvent the idea and lore around death, but I think it does it in such a convoluted way that doesn't make a lick of sense to anybody, be that the characters or the audience. What do you mean bring new life? If she was supposed to die and she comes back to life, how is that new life? That's more like recycled life. I don't know. It just feels like they tried an idea and the idea wasn't really fully baked. And speaking of Kim, I just wish she was a stronger character and like was able to hold more of her own ground. And I wish the visual language kind of like emphasized who her character was. There are multiple times where I wish Eugene was our main character, but you know what? You win some, you lose some. She's also choosing to date a cop who drives around with loose coffee in his car, so that's problematic. Overall, I'm gonna give Final Destination 2 a comfortable B. All right, next movie. Okay, I decided to put my hair down because I was tired of the way I was feeling. But we are on to talk about Final Destination 3, i.e. the only movie I actually remember watching when I was younger from this entire franchise. There is also a lot of continuity disclaimers that I need to make with this movie. If you owned or rent the DVD, there is a special features option where you can choose the fate of the characters. This means you get to manipulate some of the characters' actions and change the way they die in the movie, or if they even die at all. This also includes a section where you see a little newspaper clipping that says that Kimberly from the last movie and the cop died by getting pushed into a wood shredder, a la Fargo style. However, according to the Reddit threads and the Wikipedia, this is not a canon event, so therefore Kim and the cop are still alive, but will they ever be featured again in these movies? Unsure. It seems like they escaped death, but we are never going to touch back on their story, nor how they escaped death. We never think about it for like all of the movies except for Bloodlines. I haven't seen it yet, so TBD on that one. So when we are talking about the deaths of Final Destination 3, we are talking about the canonical deaths that are established in the theatrical release version of this movie. Speaking of the theatrical release movie, guys, guess who's back at the director's seat? Mr. James Wong. Yeah, he's back here with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who is acting her ass off throughout this entire movie. Where are my Sky High and Scout Pilgrim girlies? Donde está? But guys, this marks a change in the Final Destination franchise. We have moved to filming on digital. You hate to see it. While the visual language does work for our main character, it will introduce this idea of Final Destination trying on new things that are very trendy at the time. So yeah, you know, when we get to the next movie, there's going to be a lot of 3D elements, which piss me off. James Cameron, I'm coming for you. The positive is that James Wong knows how to make a visual language work, and it works for our main character, Wendy. We open the film meeting Wendy and her classmates who are having a grad night at their local amusement park. She is on yearbook, so she does as a girl does and takes a bunch of photos of the night on her digital camera. Wendy's friend group includes her best friend, her boyfriend Josh, her best friend's boyfriend Kevin, two really popular girls named Ashley and Ashlyn, a goth couple named Ian and Aaron, a football boy for the ages Lewis, and her sister Julie. There's also a guy going around with a recorder saying he's making a film. He is a 20-year-old man hitting on 17-year-old girls and being an absolute creepazoid. These movies always have to have one creepazoid in them, and this one is Frankie, and I want to fight him. Wendy and her friends are getting ready to ride the Devil's Flight, which is apparently the scariest roller coaster in the US of A. But Wendy is not here for it. She's watching the roller coaster and the pipes are shaking. Tony Todd's voice is coming over the loudspeaker and she's like, all the signs are pointing to this being a bad idea. But her boyfriend's like, yo girl, take a chill pill. It's gonna be okay. Sometimes you have to let go of having control over everything. Which is sound advice and would work if Wendy did not just get assigned the front seat of the roller coaster. She can't do that. She could do the ride, but she won't get in the front. And Josh is like, okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna flip a coin with my friend to see who's gonna sit with you in the back of the roller coaster, because I kind of don't want to. Be a better boyfriend. Kevin ends up having to sit with Wendy, and she's like, thank you for sitting with me. I kind of don't even want to be here. And he's like, I don't want to be next to you. I want to be with my girlfriend in the front, but that's not happening for either of us. Before they take off, Wendy tries to snap a photo, but the ride attendant is like, yo, you can't have any cameras on here. That is not allowed. Frankie's hearing this and he's like, okay, let me just put my camcorder in my pocket so nobody sees. He wants to film Ashley and Ashlyn as they're going through the loop-de-loop because, again, creepazoid. As the roller coaster is about to take off, we get a little POV shot of the hydraulics that are leaking fluid. Not a good sign. And things are about to get worse because Frankie pulls out his camera to be a freak. Ashley and Ashlyn swat it away and the camera wraps around the frame of the roller coaster. See where I'm going with this? The coaster ends up hitting the camera, the hydraulics break, the arm braces fly up. How could it get worse? Let me tell you. The front of the coaster hits a broken piece and ends up flying off the tracks, killing everybody instantly. People are flying out left and right, and then the coaster ends up stalling on one of the loops. Yeah. Everyone's dangling, everyone's trying to fight for their life, but they're slipping and they're falling and they're dying. Luckily, Wendy and Kevin are able to get the coaster back down and things are looking a-okay until they both die. Yeah, it's tough city out there, girly pops. But don't worry, remember the formula. It's a premonition. Wendy starts to have a panic attack and she's like, I gotta get off the ride right here, right now. The roller coaster assistant releases the whole back of the roller coaster. Kevin and Wendy get out. Ashley and Ashlyn follow. Frankie follows. And basically everyone who's on the back of the roller coaster just leaves because the vibe is dead. Josh wants to get out too, but they're not letting him off, so he is sent to his death. And yeah, the roller coaster does derail and everyone dies. And it would have been avoided if Josh had sat with his girlfriend. A few weeks later, the girls are struggling. While Wendy and Kevin have grown closer in their grief, Wendy is just isolated. She's like, I can't be around people. I can't even look at the yearbook images. Like, life is tough. Ashley and Ashlyn are trying their best to be like supportive and they're like, hey Wendy, why don't you just come hang out with us at the tanning salon? And she's like, I would love to, but I can't. At home, Wendy starts to look through the images from grad night because she's like, okay, maybe it is time to move on, close the chapter, see what's what. But as she's going through each of these photos, she notices something a little suspicious. It almost looks like they're predicting how each person's gonna die. Wendy's feeling a bit nervous when she looks at a photo of Ashlyn and Ashley and she tries to call them, but unfortunately, these two women are burning alive in the tanning booth. And to make it worse, they're listening to Roller Coaster of Love by the Ohio Players playing on the boombox while they're dying. The Song of Death. At their funeral, Frankie is being a creep and trying to kiss a 15-year-old. Call the police. And Wendy and Kevin are talking about death's design. Wendy's looking at all the images and she's like, look at this image of Abraham Lincoln, the last known image of him before he was shot in the head. Now look at this image of the World Trade Center. Are you kidding me, Final Destination? Not the time, not the place. They end up making the connection to Flight 180 as well, and they're just like, is that what's happening to us? And Dad seems to be like, LOL, totally girl, by sending the gnarliest windstorm you've ever seen in this movie. It's just like, hey, did you miss me? But Wendy thinks that if they know the signs that they can avoid death. So they're trying to look through the images through a drive-through because you can't drive and look at images. That's just not safe. When all of a sudden a garbage truck basically pins them against a wall and they can't move. They're stuck. To make things worse, a semi-truck is coming down the road and is about to crash into them. Oh, you hate to see it. Wendy and Kevin escape in the nick of time, but unfortunately, the guy in front of them, not so lucky. The engine ends up getting ripped out of Kevin's truck. The guy in front ends up getting his head chopped up by the engine fan, and guess who that guy was? Yeah, it was Frankie. Am I mad about this one? No. Is it traumatizing? Yes. Understanding that the deaths are happening in a particular order, Kevin and Wendy are looking at the images trying to figure out who is next. And all they have to work with is a partially blocked image of who was on the roller coaster at the time. So the order is Ashley and Ashlyn, Frankie, Lewis, Ian and Aaron, some unknown people, then Kevin, and then Wendy. So now that we know Lewis is next, let's go warn him. Unfortunately for him, he is raging on life. He is like, nothing can kill me, not even these loose blades dangling above my head. And he's right. When those loose blades end up falling down, they end up cutting some wires behind him, but he is totally fine. Let's celebrate by lifting some more weights. Okay. Interesting. Let's see if we could save Ian and Aaron. Actually, Wendy does end up saving Ian from getting impaled by a bunch of spikes. Unfortunately, Aaron is not as lucky and she ends up falling back onto a nail gun and is just repeatedly shot through the skull with nails. It's a tough one to watch. It's pretty tough. Ian is obviously devastated by this and he's just like, my girlfriend. And Kevin and Wendy are like, we're gonna go save who's ever next. Sorry. Through some investigation, Wendy finds out that the person who was sitting in front of her on the ride was her sister, Julie. Not a good sign. Unfortunately for her, her sister's at the local tricentennial fair where Kevin also is. She calls Kevin and tells him to go look after her sister and also says, hey, by the way, stay away from fireworks or anything bright that could explode in your face. He does end up finding Julie, but unfortunately for them, some assholes set off some firecrackers behind a horse, which made the horse absolutely freak out, throw its pick out of the ground, and just start taking off through the crowd. The post ends up catching Julie, wrapping around her, and she is being dragged through this entire fairground. And she's almost chewed up by a harrow, which is like a thing used to like till farms. But luckily for her, Kevin intervenes. Yes, divine intervention. We love to see it. Great, so now that Julie is saved, the next person to die was whoever was sitting next to her. Wendy's like, who is it? Because they're in danger. And one of Julie's friends, whose name is, I think her name is Perry, she's like, oh, that's me. And then gets impaled by a pole. Poor Perry, pour one out for her. So Kevin is next, and he's scared. He ends up tripping and falling and almost being blown up by some propane tanks. But luckily, Wendy pulls him away and is like, divine intervention. You'll love to see it. And now it's Wendy's turn, man. How is she gonna go out? She believes that she's gonna go out by Ian shooting her dead. And now I know what you're thinking. If Ian was supposed to already be dead, how was he supposed to be alive to end up killing Wendy? But after some further investigation, it turns out that Wendy was never supposed to be shot by Ian. Her whole thing was that she was going to die via cherry picker. Luckily for her, Ian does become some divine intervention, although accidentally, and because it skips over Wendy, it goes straight back to Ian, some fireworks go off, causes the cherry picker to fall down and crush Ian. But now we're at the end of it, girls. We survived. Julie, Wendy, and Kevin all survived, and things are looking a-okay. We flash forward 5 months, and Wendy is living in the big city. She's just a small girl in the big city taking the 081 train. 081. 180. Flight 180. There's the connection. She starts to notice the wind of death, and she's like, suspicious, I am underground. And then some guy is playing guitar and starts playing Dust on the Wind, and is like, oh, don't like that song. But as she's about to exit and save her life, guess who gets on to the subway train? It's Julie. And they're just like, okay, well, at least Kevin's not here, so if Julie dies, at least I'm safe. But then guess who they see on the subway? Yeah, it's Kevin. Wendy has another premonition that this is the midnight meat train and that they are about to all die. Panic, all three of them try to stop the train. Boom, cut to black. We hear some screams. What happened? Boom, the Final Destination 3. Honestly, what a fun movie. What a good movie. I think this movie is so well put together because just like in the opening scene alone, you get to know who these characters are and how they interact with each other. There's some actual character building moments before it hits the fan. I really care about these characters, and so when they die, I'm a bit sad about it. But I do love that there's no forced romances. Everyone is trying to actually support each other and survive through all of this. But Death is a sneaky little girl. But this does introduce an issue I have with James Wong. And it's an issue that I will continue to have with him throughout his like entire filmography. He is so campy to the point where it's a bit too absurd. It's absurd and it's taken so seriously to the point where I'm just like, what am I supposed to do with this? It starts to lose sight of what little plot there really is. And then you get like confusing moments of like the whole Ian situation where it's like, was he supposed to kill Wendy or like what was actually supposed to get Wendy? I think it's really hard for me to like suspend my disbelief at a certain point in a Wong movie. But you know what? That's okay. Because it's still pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and give Final Destination 3 a B. It's okay. It's a good movie. But it is not the second best movie of this franchise, unfortunately. Will that honor go to our next movie, The Final Destination? No. Oh my God. I don't even want to talk about this movie. Not only will this movie feature some of the worst looks in this entire franchise, it will also introduce some of the stockiest characters you've ever met and some of the worst CGI you've ever seen since, I don't know, a sci-fi movie. Have you seen Ozark Shark? I have. You know what's also really bad about this movie? It's in 3D. If you haven't in a while watched like a late 2000s 3D movie, do yourself a favor and try watching it on like any streaming service and realize how laughable it is. They really force you to engage with this very trendy gag, and it's annoying. I hated the 3D craze after Avatar. I want to fight James Cameron. Put me in his submersible. I'll duke it out under the ocean with him. Kidding, I don't want to fight James Cameron. I think he's a lovely man. Unfortunately, James Wong did not return for The Final Destination because he was really busy making a cinematic masterpiece called Dragon Ball Evolution. Ever heard of her? Ever watched her? Because I have. It was bad. Instead, David R. Ellis returned to the franchise after directing Final Destination 2, and if he had not passed away already, I would personally like to fight him because this movie is the bane of my existence. Everything in this movie is what I do not like about the horror genre. Like, for instance, where is the logic of this movie? Is it in the room with us now? I guess let me stop stalling talking about this movie and let's just start talking about it because I could rip one into this movie for like the next 300 years. We open the movie at a stark car race where we meet our main characters, Nick, Lori, Janet, and Hunt. Nick is our main character though, and he's starting to notice some of the signs that our main characters start to notice. Like, the bench is breaking, the concrete beams above us are cracking and shaking, and also the fence that's supposed to keep us safe is rattling quite a lot. He also notices that someone in front of him is wearing a t-shirt that says, "Life is a bitch, then you die." Questions. And let me tell you, when you're getting to know these characters, you don't get to know them at all. They all kind of just suck. You're like, okay, so you're the himbo jerk. You are the girl who doesn't believe in anything that's happening. You are just a plot device. And Nick is just the main character. He is a Mary Sue. But they are so self-aware that they're like in a parody version of a Final Destination movie that it's just annoying. So let's go ahead and kill some characters. One of the cars ends up getting into an accident that has it launch all four wheels into the crowd, absolutely decapitating one woman right off the bat. Chaos ensues. One of the cars crashes into a beam, which causes the stadium to basically collapse. An engine crushes a woman. We lose all our characters. An explosion happens and kills Nick. Again, say it with me. It's a formula, premonition. We get it. Nick starts to call out all the signs and he's like, guys, I think we should leave. But the guy in front of him is like mad that he's like, oh, we're all gonna die at this race. Okay. And they end up getting into a tussle that makes them like have to leave. And a few other people also like exit the stadium with them for like one reason or another. And then the accident does happen and everyone's like, oh my God, how did you know this was gonna happen? And the gang is saved, except for one woman who immediately got by a loose tire. How? I couldn't tell you. I literally could not tell you how it happened. I wish the Mythbusters were still around so they can myth-bust some of these stats, you know? This would be one that I would submit. Lori, who is my favorite plot device to ever exist, is like, Nick, we gotta go to the memorial, we gotta mourn these people, and there we get to see who survived from the premonition. We got a neo-Nazi, fun. We have a mom and her family, a mechanic, Hunt and Janet, a security guard, and then it's Lori and then Nick. That is the order of how we're supposed to die in the premonition, i.e. how they're going to die in real life, because we are never going back to 2 and how they messed with the pattern of things. But hey, they cheated death. What could go wrong? Lucky for us, the neo-Nazi is the first to go. So my camera, i.e. my smartphone, absolutely overheated an hour and a half into recording. So I took a little break. I grabbed myself a coffee, and here we are. And we are back at a really great scene because we were talking about the death of a neo-Nazi. The neo-Nazi decides he's going to go to the security guard's house and burn a cross in his front yard. No. But luckily for us, the Deathwind decides to blow his little charm off of his rearview window, which then turns on the radio to play a death song, i.e. Why Can't We Be Friends? Racism, end it, never heard from her again. But the car shifts gears and now it is moving forward. Also, when the neo-Nazi was grabbing stuff from the back of his truck, he accidentally released the chain. And so now the chain is just dragging on the ground. The guy goes and chases the car. He accidentally gets caught on the chain. He's starting to get dragged. Now the car is leaking gasoline, and at cruising speed, the chain sparks, igniting the stream of gasoline and setting the neo-Nazi on fire. We love it. And to top it off, he explodes. Yeah, I love it. And you want to know what the crazy part is? Nick had a terrible CGI vision of all of this happening in his dream. Crazy bananas. Did his CGI dream make a lick of sense? No. The next morning, Lori is eating her cereal in her underwear like she's 5 years old, and she sees the news report the guy died, and she's like, whoa, that is absolutely crazy town. Nick sees it, and he's like, what if? And hear me out. My visions are signs of death. Oh, crazy. Guess what? We're back with the vision bullshit. Guys, the visions do not work. The visions do not work for this type of storytelling. I hate to say it. I hate to be the person who says this. But they're completely pointless because they don't make enough sense for us to understand what it is we are seeing. We don't understand what the signs of death are because guess what? There is no context around what the visions are, nor do we get to see it happening. But then Nick gets another vision of scissors and an eyeball. So who's next on the chopping block? Yeah, the mom. And guess where she's at? Getting a haircut. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that so silly wild? And you think she would die from the scissors cutting her hair, or the aerosol can that's now touching the flat iron, or maybe even the loose fan above her? No. You know what gets her? What gets her is a rock that gets launched from a lawnmower and straight through her eyeball. So what were the scissors about, Nick? Tell me. I'm waiting with bated breath. God, this movie pisses me off. And you know what I love about a 2009 movie? I love that nobody knew how to incorporate smartphones into movies or storytelling yet. And so we get a printed out news article about the mom's death in the next scene. And it is cinema. But Lori is playing detective here. She goes, look at this news article, and then look at this news article about Flight 180 and how people had premonitions of death and then started dying in the order that they were supposed to die in on the plane. Crazy. Maybe that's what's happening to us. And Nick is like, maybe I can remember more if I go back to the site of my trauma and try to remember. But it doesn't fully work. And luckily for them, the security guard is like, well, if you're trying to remember, why don't I just show you the footage of the tragedy that for some reason I still have? While Nick's watching it all, he's like, oh my God, the mechanic, they're the next person. That's insanity. Lori, Nick, and the security guard end up going and fighting the mechanic at a shop that is literally for the Fast and Furious franchise. And none of it is up to ocean standards. It is a trap waiting to happen. And you want to know the crazy part? The mechanic hears this theory and he's like, you know what? I'm ready to die. Without my girl, life is pointless. The security guard is like, dude, I know exactly how you feel because when I was drunk driving and accidentally killed my wife and daughter, I was like, life's not worth it. But then I found out life is worth it. Therefore, you should continue to live. I have a few questions. 1, I'm glad you're recovering. Good for you. 2, I think they're very different situations. Just gonna say that. But there was no time, girls, to really unpack this failed attempt at character development. Instead, we had to watch the mechanic get hit by a giant canister and press through a chain link fence like he is cat-shaped pasta. Things are not looking good because Nick gets another vision and he's like, water. Oh my God, something with water is gonna kill somebody. Who's next on the chopping block? Hate to tell you, there's 2 people on the chopping block. Yeah. Hunt and Janet. And you want to know some fuckassery that happens? Nick gets this premonition of the water thing because he looks at a sign for a spa called Clear Rivers, And it's like, water. Did you get it? Did you get the reference to Final Destination? Clear Rivers? Clear? Remember her? Hit me over the head with a baseball bat. Unfortunately for the gang, both Hunt and Janet are around water. Hunt is at a public pool being an absolute menace to society, and Janet, in her broken sunroof window, decide to go to an automatic car wash, which is like the worst place to be. Again, where is the logic, girly pops? Where is it? During the car wash, the car gets stuck, the sunroof opens up, and a pipe bursts, and Janet is literally going to drown because her car is filling with water. To make things worse, she sticks her head out of the sunroof, and she's like, I'm breathing. And then the sunroof closes a little bit, trapping her head, and the car starts moving forward. You know those big, like, rotating things that go over the top of your car in those automatic car washes? Yeah. It's coming for her head, and it's ready to decapitate her. Luckily for her, Lori and the security guard find her just in time and save her life. Divine intervention. We'd love to see it. Now, how is Hunt doing? Not good? Pity. His big booty gets stuck in a drain, and his innards become outers. He literally gets douched to death. Do we get to see the body afterwards? No, because the filmmakers are cowards. Also, it is kind of insane. Like, if you're a bad person in these movies in any form, shape, or way, you will die. Like, sorry. No one's saving you, girly pop. And you know what's crazy? I think Nick should die. I'm gonna say it. Let him be the first main character we see die on screen, because I do not like this character. He has no reaction to anything. Why can't we get like the secondary character becomes the main character in the third act after the main character dies? That'd be so much more interesting, because that's basically what Lori is doing. Lori is so much more interesting than Nick. Nick just kind of reacts to things, but like barely. It's like surface level. Lori's doing all the hard work out here and then going, Nick, you're so smart. You're so cool and smart. Get out of here with that. Well, with divine intervention saving Janet, the next person on the chopping block is, in fact, the security guard. Womp womp. And he just accepts death, and so does Lori? I'm sorry. What franchise are we in where people are just like, well, death wanted me to die, so I guess I'm gonna die? Brother, no, that's not what makes these movies fun. What makes it fun is your attempt to try to stop fate from it happening. Like, put some effort in. Put some effort in. I want to see things happen. Don't just be like, womp womp. But luckily for us, the security guard's attempts to unalive himself do not work. And the gang is like, oh my god, we broke the curse. No further investigation needed. We jump forward in time, and Nick and Lori are planning a trip to Amsterdam. And isn't that so fun for them? Lori's at the mall with Janet, and they're going to go shoe shopping. And then they're going to go watch a 3D movie. Whoa, meta. Nick turns on the news to find out that somebody who was supposed to die in his premonition survived and is in the hospital and has just been identified, which means that Death is like, oh, now I also know, because apparently Death canonically watches the news. Nick is like, oh my god, we didn't break the chain. No. And he, the security guard, run to the hospital to save the cowboy that we all forgot about and didn't even, like, we only knew him for like maybe one single scene at the beginning of this movie. I didn't even mention it because guess what? Not really important, because as soon as they get to the hospital, he is crushed by a bathtub full of water. At least it's more interesting than the way that Eugene and Clear both got like nicks from the series. Nick and the security guard are trying to get to the mall to save Lori and Janet when the security guard gets hit by an ambulance. Not even the ambulance can do their job. Nick is like, oh my god, pour one out, but I gotta go save my girlfriend. Nothing but love and light. But Nick actually gets a real full-fledged premonition, and not like a jumbled up CGI vision that reminds you that this movie is 3D. And he sees that the theater is going to go from a 3D movie to a 4D movie because an actual explosion is going to annihilate everybody in the movie theater. Luckily, Nick shows up in time, and Lori is saved because she's like, got it, I'm going to exit the theater. They're standing in the aisle arguing with Janet when the explosion goes off and Janet is impaled by a rogue piece of metal. Now, why is Janet killed? Because guys, let's pull out a chart. As you can see here, the actual death list in the premonition went Cowboy, Janet, and Hunt, but he's dead already. Cowboy, Janet, guard, the security guard, Lori, and then Nick. Okay, remember that? Okay, so why then was Janet targeted, and then we found out about the cowboy? Guard dies, and then it tries to kill Lori. Lori is saved by divine intervention. We skip Nick, and we go back to Janet. Why do we skip Nick? Okay. Now here's my theory. The cowboy was saved by divine intervention. Okay, sure. So he's pulled out of the rebel. He's now after Janet somehow. Okay. it still doesn't make sense. Because even if it's Janet and the cowboy, she still in the premonition died after the cowboy. So divine intervention means it would have skipped him, gone to Janet, gone to the security guard, gone to Lori, gone to Nick. But it didn't do that. Instead, it went Janet, cowboy, Lori, skip Nick, go back to Janet. It doesn't make sense. Like, literally look at this time. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a timeline, and you guys are going to see it, and you're going to be like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. This is how it ends up. And this doesn't make sense because Nick isn't touched. Why is he so heavily plot armored? I hate the Final Destination. I don't use that word often, but I despise this movie. We gotta get through it. I'm over it. I'm so over it. Anyways, Lori and Nick are trying to escape after Janet is dead, and for some reason they take the escalator instead of the stairs, which is not what you're supposed to do in a disaster. But an explosion causes the escalator to malfunction, and like half of the steps get ripped off, and there's just like the gear turning on the end. And guess what happens to Lori? Her tennis shoelace gets stuck in it, and it crushes her entire body while Nick just holds on to her. And he's shocked. He's bewildered. Oh my god, you guys, guess what? It was just a premonition. Yeah, egg on your face. It was a premonition. He had a premonition inside of a premonition, double vision. We're back to the moment right before the security guard gets hit by the bus, and it goes, hey, watch out, just as the ambulance hits the security guard. Boom, deceased. Nick has no time to mourn this man who has given the best last moments of his life to these obnoxious people. He goes to the movie theater, and rather than save Lori from the theater, he's like, I'm gonna stop the explosion entirely, and he does. But here's my problem. Everybody in that movie theater was supposed to die, so Nick is not a hero. He put everybody on death's list, and they're all gonna have tragic deaths. Nick is a villain. He is my nemesis. So Janet, Lori, and Nick are alive. Isn't that so fun? But Lori is still on, well, no, because of divine intervention, Lori is no longer on the chopping block, so it's Nick's time to die. We're at the end of the movie, and we're ending it at a coffee shop called Death by Caffeine, and they're all chit-chatting. They're like, oh my god, that was so crazy. I can't believe we almost died like multiple times. And Nick is like, wait a minute, I'm seeing signs for the first time in this entire movie. The vision stuff, yeah. Throw out the window. We never touch it again. In this exact movie where it is a plot device. And Nick is like, I think we're gonna die, and die they will, because a truck rams into Death by Caffeine, and in a animated X-ray looking thing, we get to see who dies. And you wanna know who dies? You wanna see this list? Yeah, because it doesn't make sense. Janet dies first, followed by Lori, and then Nick dies last. Cut to credits. I'm over it. The Final Destination. Also, where's Tony Todd? Logically, doesn't make sense. Plot-wise, doesn't make sense. Death-wise, it's fine. Nothing inventive. I had no fun with this movie. It's not ironic. It's not a parody. It is supposed to be a satirical version of itself, but it doesn't take itself seriously like all the other movies do, and it makes me feel like an idiot for enjoying the previous 3 movies. This is a Final Destination movie that feels embarrassed to be a Final Destination movie, and that is really shitty. Like, that really sucks. And it stinks for this movie to be called, like, The Final Destination, and they were going to end on this note, and I'm really glad they didn't, because it is a very sour note to end on. You might be surprised to hear that I'm going to give this movie a D. I would be itching to give it an F if I didn't enjoy some of the moments. While this is a very frustrating movie to watch, it is not, like, super unwatchable. There are things to admire, for sure, but it is the bane of my existence. Let's move on. Final Destination 5 actually brings us back to our roots. Thank God. It's a very simplistic movie that doesn't try to like introduce new elements that did not work. We learned that visions do not work. 2 and 4, we took those lessons learned from those movies and said we will never do that again. And we all said thank you. Thank you so much, Stephen Quall. We really appreciate it. I also want to say thank you to the actress who plays Olivia. She is so beautiful. And every time she's on screen, I have the biggest crush. I'm oohing and awing, and I'm like, I would die for you. I would be your divine intervention. But speaking of The Office, I think we should meet all the characters who we're going to be following throughout this movie. Our main characters all work at an office job that is run by Dennis. Also, the actor who plays Dennis, what's his name, David Koshner? He's from Tipton, Missouri, which is literally 30 minutes away from my hometown, so to the Missourians, we love to see a win. So how do our office mates die? A suspension bridge. Yep. Who would have thought? Where was the Mothman when we needed him? everyone that we already met pretty much dies except for Molly. Molly was able to get to safety and survived. But again, say with me, premonition. Yes, we're learning. But the Pauling people were saved from the premonition thanks to Sam, who is the one who had it. So in the order that they were saved, we have Candace, who's an intern who is also a gymnast. Isaac, who is a creepy tech guy, also a racist. Olivia, who is a very cool girly who hates wearing glasses. Nathan, he is a factory overseer. Dennis, the company's boss. Peter, Candace's boyfriend and the best friend of our main character, who is Sam, who is our main character who wants to be a chef. After the memorial, the gang is approached by, he's back, Tony Todd. And he's like, y'all fucked up. Y'all cheated death, and now you guys are going to die. Nothing but love and light. Mwah. See you later. Everyone's like, what the fuck just happened? Let's move on. At her final practice as a gymnast, Candace is feeling a bit woozy. The vibes are off. Maybe it has something to do with her lucky band breaking, or maybe it has to do with the broken AC unit, the screw that fell out of the roof and is now just sitting on the balance beam, or maybe it's the screw that's coming unloose on the uneven bars. So many things could go wrong, and I'm kind of here for it. But Candace ends up meeting the Grim Reaper when another gymnast steps on a nail, falls off the balance beam, hits the chalk, it falls over in front of a fan. It blows into Candace's face. She's like, what is happening? The uneven bars come uneven, or even more uneven. She face plants, snapping in half. To make things worse, Peter was in the stand watching the whole time. R.I.P. to Kansas, and R.I.P. to Peter's fragile mental state. Sam comes to comfort his friend and sees that Tony Todd is just lingering. There's also a detective who thinks that Sam is a serial killer, but is like, things seem a little odd. I'm gonna keep my eye on you. The next day, the tech guy Isaac is going through dead people's drawers at work and finds a coupon for a massage. This massage place, he's being a racist and is getting acupuncture done against his will when all of a sudden, the death wind arrives. Yes, I love the death wind. The death wind comes and sets fire to the massage room. And to make things worse, the bed that he's on collapses and he falls over, face planting and getting all the acupuncture needles just shoved into his skin. I have no remorse for this man. He narrowly escapes the fire and he is still kicking and he's like, whew, that was a close one, when all of a sudden the Buddha statue from above breaks off the shelf and crushes his head. Yes. The remaining gang, minus Olivia, show up to the scene to see Isaac's corpse when they see Tony Todd again, and Sam is like, wait a gosh darn minute. Who are you? Why do I keep seeing you? And he's like, I'm literally just a coroner. But then again, I do know a thing or two about death and fate's design and that you cannot cheat it. He's like, I've seen this thing before, and basically the only way to survive and break the chain is to take the life years of another person. Girls, pay attention, new lore alert. We know that new life can break the chain, whatever the hell that means. But we did not know that you could just have someone replace you in the chain and you could take whatever years they have remaining. So yeah, some of our characters are gonna have to kill people. Isn't that tragic? Now knowing that they are stuck in a chain of unfortunate events, Sam realizes that I think Olivia's next. So where is Miss Olivia? Well, she is getting LASIK eye surgery. Ooh. There are very few things in horror that really just make me tense up and go, I can't look at the screen for that long. And it's anything to do with eyes or nails. Oof, the fleshy parts of the skin. I can't. It's same with the insides of the fingers when people start cutting that. I can't do it, man. It's really hard to watch. Unfortunately for Olivia, the doctor leaves the room for some certain reason, and she's starting to have a mild panic attack because there's a beeping noise that keeps going up and up and up, which is basically the power of the laser. And because she's freaking out, she accidentally sets off the laser machine and it starts to burn her eyeball. I hate it for her. She is trying tooth and nail to escape and avoid this laser that just keeps shooting into her eye. Eventually, she's able to pull her head out of the contraption that's keeping her stuck in place when Sam and Molly bust in and they're like, Olivia, you're alive. And she's like, I can't see. Trips on the eyeball of a teddy bear that she was holding for comfort and falls out of a window. Yep. The detective shows up and is like, okay, tall white boy, I know you're not the killer, but can you explain to me what's going on? Sam is like, yeah, death is after us because we escaped death on the bridge. Point blank, that's the story. And the detective is like, oh, I we gotta call the X-File folks for this one. I don't do this. Sorry. All I can do is like be around and protect you the best I can. Something you need to know about the friend group. Peter is having a really hard time after surviving and then watching his girlfriend die. So he's in a really bad state of mind. It only gets worse when he discovers that Nathan accidentally killed somebody at work and basically avoided death. It's like a twisted divine intervention situation. But this is all Peter needs to go, yeah, I'm gonna kill somebody. It's even better that he's come to this conclusion because he's next on the list after Dennis gets a giant saw blade into the face. No one saw it coming. It was boom, boom, dead. Because of all this death happening around him, Sam is like, YOLO. I'm gonna take that internship in Paris to become a chef, and I'm gonna take my girlfriend Molly with me. Nothing but love and light. Here's to new futures, Ratatouille. Peter is celebrating this milestone with a romantic dinner with Molly at the restaurant he works for, and then Peter shows up. Peter, what are you doing here, you silly goose? Oh my god, he has a gun. He's gonna kill Molly. And see, this is what I like about Final Destination. I like characters who are losing their mind because they are afraid of death and they're like, I gotta do whatever I need to do to survive. And it is melodramatic. It is camp. I love it. Peter fires a gunshot. The detective is outside and he's like, I'm going in. And the detective finds her and is like, what the heck is going on? Boom! Detective dead. Peter has killed the detective. And he's like, I got all of his life years. I'm saved. And Molly's like, congratulations. I'm just gonna go. And he's like, wait a minute. You saw me kill a federal officer, and that's a crime. So now I kind of have to kill you. This man just wanted an excuse to kill a woman. Good lord. Luckily, Sam puts an end to like Peter's bullshit, stabbing him through the heart with a meat skewer. And Sam is like, so I'm next on the chopping block after Peter. Am I gonna die? A gun that had fallen out of Peter's hand and landed on a stove that is just on fires and it misses Sam. This is all the confirmation Sam needs to be like, well, I'm chilling. The logic behind this is that he got Peter's years that Peter took from the cop. And so things are cool. Let's go to Paris. While they're boarding the flight, Sam hears some commotion happening at the front of the cabin, and he looks to see Carter and Alex from Final Destination having a tiff in the front of the cabin. Wait a minute. Oh my god. The lore, the connections, the loop. Guys, this is a prequel. The shock of a century, you should see your faces. And you want to know what makes things worse? Yeah. Life years don't transfer, babe. Sam was supposed to die, which then draws me to this conclusion. Death is a really bad planner. Death cannot close the loop to save its life. Death is like, I'm gonna take out Flight 180, kill one man, and then one other person escapes and he's like, no, 5 more people. Death just needs a better planner, or needs like an assistant more than like Tony Todd. So yes, the plane crashes, Sam and Molly both die, RIP. They were real ones. I liked them a lot. But this isn't how the movie ends. No. We are at a memorial service, and Nathan is talking to a coworker, and the coworker reveals that the guy that Nathan accidentally killed apparently had a tumor. And Nathan was like, oh, he's gonna die any day now. And a plane engine falls through the roof and crushes Nathan. Yeah, and that is the Final Destination 5. I love a prequel in disguise. I love actors committed to the dialogue. I love the drama. I love the camp. I love the kills. It was the perfect amount of blood. It was tasteful. It made me squirm a little bit. It really took us back to basics, and that's what makes a good Final Destination movie. I'm gonna give Final Destination 5 an A. I think it's because of where it's placed. You have a really, really bad time and then you're just on a high. And it just feels so good to have this be the redemption for the Final Destination movies. And so if I had to do like the top tier ranking, it's Final Destination, Final Destination 5, Final Destination 3, and then we go all the way to the bottom where the Final Destination is. I am going to take a break for now. I'm gonna come back to you guys after I watch Final Destination Bloodlines, and I hope I have great things to say about it.
You know you make me wanna.
After 14 years, Final Destination finally returned. And it's like it never left. Oh, it's like a good friend that you haven't talked to in a while, and you just text them, you meet up, and it's like nothing has changed. No time has passed. That's Final Destination Bloodlines. And I know I'm giving it high praise right off the bat, but girls, it was good. It's like everybody who touched this project actually cared about Final Destination and understood what they were making. And no more is that reflected than in how the filmmakers pitched the entire movie. They faked their own deaths in the pitch meeting. The status of it all, the iconic of it all. I remember reading about this stunt in an airport in Biloxi after visiting my grandparents, and I was like, wow, cinema. And take notes. Take notes, because if you do your homework, you go far. Be warned, this isn't a perfect movie, but my God, is it fun? And I'm gonna be bold enough to say this. This is in the top 25 of the best movies of the year. Shocker, Cannes found dead in a ditch. Is this movie predictable? Girls, we have a formula for a reason. Where have you been for the last hour? You know there's a premonition. You know there's gonna be a bunch of deaths. And you know Tony Todd's gonna be there. Hopefully, my God. And because this movie is so new, I don't want to get into like a beat by beat breakdown. Instead, I just want to do the hits leading up to what makes this movie iconic. This will also give context to my final grade and why this movie is essential to the franchise as a whole. So let's get into it. In the 1960s, we meet Iris, who is loving life. She's your all-American girl next door. She is Betty from Riverdale. And she is about to have dinner in the hottest new restaurant in town, a giant Space Needle. Where are they? No one knows, but I love the space age architecture. Come on, Googie, where you at? But you know what? She sings signs. She hears 3 death songs, and then she's like, suspicious. And she has every right, because guess what? The glass falls through. The building collapses, it catches on fire, piano crushes multiple people, everyone dies. And when Iris is falling to her death, we do the classic zoom into the eye and zoom out, and we are with a whole new character. Who is this 19-year-old in a college classroom? This is Stephanie, and she's not having premonitions, she's having premonition nightmares. Turns out that Iris is Stephanie's grandmother. New lore time. Yes, new lore. Get excited. Turns out that Iris didn't actually die in that Space Needle restaurant. It was just, and say it with me, a premonition. Yes. And she ends up saving everybody's lives. How many people is that? I do not know. But one character of note is that she saved a little boy. Remember him, because he will be important later. And Death now has to murder all these people who were supposed to die. Not just 5 people. No. Like almost, I would say 150 people. That's a lot of people. And Death does not have time for that. Death nearly takes like 3 months to kill 5 people. So over the last 60 years, Death has been killing person by person the way they were supposed to die in the premonition and taking out their entire family bloodlines. Uh-oh, I said the title, take a drink. This is all a big old callback to Final Destination 2 in multiple ways. Pay attention. Remember how Kim was like, oh, if that baby who was in the premonition who was supposed to die has a baby, that breaks the cycle. Yes, everyone catching on? But they were wrong because the lady wasn't even supposed to die in the premonition. So the baby is pointless. It was always supposed to be born. But this movie is setting up that even if the lady was in the premonition, having a new baby means nothing. It's just another name to add to the death cycle because that baby wasn't supposed to exist. All of them girls in Final Destination 2 were gonna be absolutely wrecked no matter what. So what was Tony Todd talking about in Final Destination 2 where he's like, new life breaks the chain? Well, we later find out after we get confirmation that Kim did live. Yes, we got the answer. She's alive. What they mean essentially is that if you actually die, like your heartbeat stops and you come back to life, that's new life. Therefore, the chain is broken for you. Congratulations. Death is no longer after your ass. But here's where the lore gets a little messy, if it wasn't already messy. That means, and I'm just assuming, I'm making an ass out of you and me. I'm assuming that everybody who has died in the Final Destination franchise is somehow related to someone who was supposed to die on this giant Space Needle situation. Because Death has been like trying to fix its error for nearly 60 years. However, I don't think that theory holds a lot of water simply because like Alex's parents still were alive even though he was killed, RIP by a brick. But he could have also been adopted. We'll never know. Unless you guys want to make some theories about it, which I would love to read, put them in the comments. Nothing like going down a rabbit hole late at night with people going, what if? Therefore, conclusion being, the Final Destination Expanded Universe, or the FDEU, for those who are with it, is a complicated place to exist in. The lore is always reinventing itself, which we love. There's also books that like, I don't think I have the time to get into. I will read the Wikipedia for it, but I can't like sit down and be like, yes, literature. I still need to get through the last 4th Wing book because that is just so hard to read. So we're back with Steph. Okay, let's reel it back in. So what is Stephanie gonna do with all this generational trauma she's inheriting? Guys, I told you that the Final Destination series loves a trend, and generational trauma is currently the trend within movies. She finds Grandma Iris in her Mad Max-esque style of house, and Grandma Iris is like, I'm living, I'm thriving, I'm protecting you. And honestly, what a good grandmother. And because she is still alive, her family gets to live. We love to hear it. But she does have cancer. Tough city out there, girls. Knowing that her time is short, Iris steps out of her house for the first time in decades. And she passes down her knowledge and her trauma to Stephanie in the Necronomicon. And is like, everything you need to know to avoid death is in this book. nothing but love and light. And then a wind veil gets pierced through her eyeball, killing her immediately. R.I.P. Grandma Iris, you really were outrunning death, and I really love that for you. She truly is a final girl that we need to like really invest in. Now that Iris is dead, the curse has moved on to the family, starting with the eldest and their line, and then moving on to the youngest and their line. And girls, one by one, they all are going to start dying some brutal ass deaths. There's even one of my favorite deaths in this movie, which is going to be the MRI machine, which acts like a Magneto-esque magnet operating at research level. Doctors, is this a thing? And honestly, nothing like snapping a body in half the wrong way. It's really going to work for me. This movie takes all the hits from all the other movies and really like highlights it in this. And you know what? Again, they took their notes. They aced the test. I'm very happy with it. And guess who's back? Guess who's back as the Harbinger of Doom? Tony Todd. And plot twist of the century, he was the little boy that Iris saved in the Space Needle. We get his backstory, girls. But he's just another link in the chain of death's design. But he's grown now. He has terminal cancer, and he knows the end is near. But before he leaves, the man knows he has a job to do. He does a lore dump, explains that like you take a life to give a life, or you have to give new life in, which means you have to die and then come back to life. And it's really funny because like later on you get characters who are debating killing a baby, and they're just like, no, this is crazy. I love that this franchise has morals. And if you didn't know, Tony Todd actually passed away last year because he did have some terminal cancer that he was dealing with in his personal life. And the filmmakers let Tony Todd improvise his last lines in the franchise as a really awesome, great goodbye to everyone who's ever loved him. And so the last thing he leaves us with is this line: I intend to enjoy my time I have left, and I suggest you do the same. Life is precious. Enjoy every second. You never know when. Good luck. Pour one out. Pour one out for Mr. Todd. But how was this movie overall? Honestly, it was a great time. It's goofy. It has a lot of red herrings. The visuals can be atrocious at times. And the climax doesn't quite climax, you know? But the vibes are vibing. And the kills are also great. I think there's a lot of misdirects that happen that I'm not always a big fan of in horror movies, but it really does call back to some of like the greater aspects of all the other movies like 1, 3, and 5. And so overall, I think I'm gonna give Final Destination Bloodlines a B. It's a hella fun B horror movie that I think you will honestly love if you love any type of horror movies. It's really not that bloody. And if it is showing blood, it's CGI blood, so like, you're fine. So the final rankings go as this. We got Final Destination 4 coming in last with a D, Final Destination 2 at C, Final Destination 3 a B, Final Destination Bloodlines a B, Final Destination 5 A, and Final Destination is in the S tier, where it belongs. So after yapping for nearly an hour and some change about the Final Destination franchise or the Final Destination Extended Universe, what have we learned? Formulas matter. These films live and die by their formulas. The structure gives the chaos shape, and it sets up expectations and builds suspense and gives the audience something familiar to latch onto while we have a really good time hooting and hollering about people getting absolutely murdered. And honestly, that's why we keep coming back to these films. It's lowbrow cinema, but lowbrow cinema is fun. The FDCU is at its best when it leans into the camp and the carnage. It might sound kind of weird, but that approach really pays its respects to the world that Final Destination 1 built. And it respects the audience too. We're not dumb, but we like dumb fun. And it knows the difference between the two and how to deliver on audiences' expectations. We don't come to these movies for character, but what this movie does really good with characters is that it gets you to care enough about them to either root for them to escape death or to absolutely get brutally killed in like the most traumatic way possible. And that's Western cinema. The FDCU is mostly a mixed bag, but it is fun. And when we average out these movies, we get a B. And that's pretty good. That's pretty good for a franchise that's 25 years old. Final Destination 4 is really dragging the bell curve here, but you know what? Someone has to. And look, you guys, this is not A24. This is not prestigious cinema. But it does give filmmakers in the horror genre some space to play within a really good structure. I genuinely hope that like Final Destination Bloodlines box office success really gets the franchise going and that more new directors get the chance to kind of work within this genre and bring something new to the table that doesn't like break the lore of the entire franchise. We can't go back to FD4. So if you bought a ticket to this movie on opening weekend, good for you, girl. I'm proud of you. But if this ends up being the end, I think I'm happy with it. That's the Final Destination franchise. That's all 6 movies. It's messy, it's deadly, and above all else, it's absolutely iconic. What is your favorite Final Destination movie? What is your favorite kill from all these Final Destination movies? I would love to know, so let me know in the comments below. As always, like, subscribe. It's free, it's fun, it really helps me out. You can also follow me over on Instagram and TikTok, where my first reactions to the movies that I normally cover here will be up live. It's fun. But until next time, I will see you at the movies. Bye.